My name is Dr. Edwin Mogere. I am a neurosurgeon and neurovascular specialist.
If you had asked him at the age of 20 about what he would want to do with his life, he would probably have wanted to be a professional rugby player. But now he is one of only 2 neurosurgeons in Kenya specializing in neurovascular surgery. My name is Dr. Mercy Korir, and on this episode of Doctor's Diary, we learn the ups and downs of a neurosurgeon through the eyes of Dr. Edwin Mogere. Dr. Mogere's passion then would have led him to rugby, following in the footsteps of his elder brother Maxwell Mogere, currently an engineer.
I played rugby for my high school. I played for the university for a little bit after I left. I played for 1 or 2 clubs. I was always interested in that tournament, Black Rock to Nakuru tennis side and that kind of thing. So I would say, maybe it's not fair to say I was sporty because I just really played rugby.
Dr. Mogere is one of 2 such specialists in the country who focus on strokes, brain tumors and skull-based surgery, considered difficult to access type of surgeries.
While I was training, I'd always wanted to be a surgeon, I was sure, and I thought neurosurgery was the most interesting. But by the time I was finishing my undergraduate education from University of Nairobi in 2003, there wasn't many training opportunities available. In fact, there were none in neurosurgery at that time. The fellowship program started like a year later, which was a College of East and Central African training, and then about 3 years later, then the University of Nairobi started the MA program. So for me, there wasn't an opportunity. So the only thing that I could train at that time was to train as a general surgeon. Aga Khan started right when I was finishing my internship, and I thought, yeah, why not? So I came here, and really it was a godsend. From there, it opened a universe for me in terms of training. So I trained as a general surgeon. I finished 4 years of training. I worked for about 6 months, and then I got an opportunity and a sponsorship from the university, and I went to Cape Town, University of Cape Town, South Africa, where then I trained as a neurosurgeon for 5 years. Basically 3.5 years as a neurosurgeon, and then 1.5 years as a vascular specialist. Then that's where I ended up. So it's been a long journey. To be precise, 9 years after finishing my basic training, which was 5 years.
So you've spent 14 years of your life.
15 years to be exact. 15 years to qualify, to be given the permission to start opening heads.
Dr. Mogere says that there are many misconceptions about neurosurgery which ought not be the case.
A unique aspect of my job, and like most doctors, is we are sensitive to the fact that we usually meet people either on the worst day or one of the worst days of their lives. That's just a fact. If I'm telling you, oh, you have a brain tumor and you're going to need this operation to save your life, that can't rank as a great day for you. Unlikely. So it just comes with the territory, and a lot of it is guiding people through a path, guiding them on decisions they have to make with as well as you can explain, as much they can read on Google. Really, they don't get a degree because they're reading. They still have to make very complex decisions with quite limited information, guiding them through that, then taking care of them, and they hand over their lives to you in a way for a short period of time. And then you have to be on point and prepare yourself and deliver the best outcome under the circumstances that you can.
His days, he says, are typical days like any other doctor, in between running clinics, looking after patients in the wards, and finding time to spend with his young family and work out. But then, when he's on call, time flies, and before he knows it, it is the wee hours of the night and he hasn't had a break.
And then you'll say, okay, I'll take a few minutes, you'll go sit down and have a bite, and as soon as you sit down, you'll be told, we have a red case, somebody has come in, he's been shot, and this and that is happening, and you'll be in theater. At 3, you'll do maybe a 3-hour op, a 4-hour op. You leave at 7, dash home, take a quick shower, And exactly as you're beginning the shower, you'll be told another patient has come in, and then you have to literally, my uncle used to say, utaoga kijeshi, and then you take off back to the hospital, and then you'll do that, and look up and say, oh crap, it's 4 a.m. in the morning. And that will be 2 days. And then at some point, you'll call your colleague and say, hey, listen, it's 72 hours, I can't carry on. I haven't had a wink of sleep. And then you'll sit back and say, this week I've worked almost 100 hours. I mean, that's crazy. But that's what it is.
At times, it might get worse than that when a patient dies and he needs to deliver the bad news. With time, he says, as a doctor, you get competent in this.
Just because of the severity of the illness, especially vascular disorders of the brain, mortality occurs frequently. When I say frequently, I don't mean many patients die. Like I said, the vast majority of patients, I would say something like ischemic strokes, more than 90% of patients will survive. And now with the current technologies, they will not only survive, 50% will be independent at 6 months. If we're able to remove the clot. And for those with hemorrhagic stroke, the proportion that does really badly are the ones who have aneurysms, which rupture. But even those ones with proper treatment, at the moment, 85% will have a fantastic outcome. So, but the 15 who will not, now you have to break the news down. You do certain realities. As you come out at first, you sort of make speeches and you plan this outlay that you're going to tell them. It never goes according to that scheme. And especially this part of the world.
Often, he finds himself navigating the thin line between life and death.
We are quite involved centrally, often, frequently in this type of decisions. So, so I'll tell you what the general principles are and then what my philosophy is. So the general principles is always, firstly, if you can't fix things, at least don't make them worse. And what that usually means is that also inflicting financial difficulties on a family is a type of harm. Now we have to be very careful how we manage that, because we are in a legal profession. When I say that, I don't mean we are in a legal profession. The medical field is, we say medical legal for a reason, right? Because this involves matters of life and death, and the state as government is involved in those matters, and rightly so, to make sure that appropriate care is being given, appropriate standards of care is being given, and that we don't have funny business going on. So the thing to guide is it's really speed of action. The implications of the clinical diagnostic model of when someone has had a catastrophic injury and is recoverable is not difficult. That is well established, and it's a criteria which we call the brainstem death criteria that can be carried out at any hospital, doesn't really need special equipment, easily confirmed. So when we do that, once we've done that, the criteria is also that it is done in such a way that the teams do not unduly influence it. So for us, it's not really such a dark area. It's what happens after that that becomes a dark area. So in other words, once we have come in and we've seen someone has met a certain criteria, you've been injured and we're not seeing any activity of brain, whatever, we will give you 24 hours to make sure all the drugs that you're given are out of the system. Then a separate team of doctors is going to do that brainstem criteria to prove that the brainstem is in fact irreversibly injured. Once that is done, a couple of hours later, a different team will do that. So you have 2 different tests by 2 different teams which are not involved in caring for the patient. Now, when those results are in, we sit down with the family and we tell them, listen, he's not coming back. Now, you have to accept the fact that a lot of them will say, no, you still go ahead and do everything. And that's not an insignificant number. But we are, so to speak, persistent. Firm is not quite the word. We have to keep repeating the message. They're not coming back. The person you knew is no longer there. I can tell you that eventually everybody gets there. They take different times, but they do get there. Because they come and do their own tests. They talk to him, they prod him, they talk, they sing to them, and then eventually they realize, by the way, this is a fact. This has happened, they're not coming back. A large majority immediately accept that reality. And then now we have criteria on how we go about managing that situation, because we give a lot of artificial support. And when I say that, I have to be clear that we don't switch off machines, so to speak. But then we don't put them on the highest possible settings. We put them on the minimal settings. And when you do that, if in fact the criteria is correct, somebody has had a brainstem death and you follow and they're correct, and you put the machines on what should be basic settings, then inevitably nature follows its course, usually shortly thereafter. We are the ones who artificially prolong that, going of by giving the heart more and more support, 4 or 5 drugs supporting that, and more drug doing that, more fluids, more that. If we just leave that to what would be considered a basic life support system, then usually the problem is solved. So it's not as big honestly a controversy as it is. The emotional deal though, that's a minefield, and that is just time. There is nothing else you can do. It does not take, you can imagine somebody wakes up in the morning perfectly healthy, they're going to town, they get into an accident, the spouse is called at 2 a.m. to say that spouse which they thought had gone to work is actually not at work, is in hospital, is in desperate need of an emergency procedure to save their lives, and then they come in and the emergency procedure is done or is not done depending on the situation, and by that evening it's already clear that they're not there, and then the next, so it's a 24 hours. Who is going to accept? We are not designed, we're not engineered that way. We need time.
Decisions of life and death are difficult for everyone, more so family members who need to make these decisions on behalf of their loved ones.
While families may not know about what a DNR is, my experience is once you explain, listen, this person is brain dead, and we are not going to be able to fix them. They're not going to make it, and all we're doing is prolonging suffering. Once they understand that, I would say 9 times out of 10, they're like, okay, we understand you, give us some time, let's discuss it. And there's almost like a collective responsibility that goes with it, because it's very rare for a wife by herself to make that decision. Almost always the brothers and the fathers have to be involved, yeah. But the answer is often yes. It doesn't come in 24 hours in all of them, although the majority does. It does come in maybe 2 days later or a week later, after they've really had a chance to investigate and be convinced that you haven't made a mistake in making such a drastic diagnosis. Yeah, so it's a DNR, do not resuscitate. It's becoming more common now, but really driven by the realities of the situation. What is very rare is an advance directive, and I really think that it's something you ought to think about. It saves your family a lot of agony. And sometimes when you've had the opportunity, because you may not have the opportunity, you have an accident, you are not expecting it, you haven't, yeah. But a lot of time you've been given a diagnosis, it's a terminal illness and so on. I think that saying to your family, I do not want to be on a ventilator forever. This is the type of care I want, and everybody has done it. You really take a huge burden from them. And they know these are the wishes, and that's what they do, and it just removes a lot of hanky-panky. Wife doesn't want him to get better, that's why, or the brothers want this property, that's why they want him to die quicker, and it's just it removes a lot of pain and sorrow at a time when the family has a lot to deal with. So that's the one message I would try and suggest that everybody look at.
I asked him whether neurosurgery is as complex as we have been made to believe.
It is very competitive to get in, no matter where you are. You go. You'd be surprised that they're actually in the Western world that there are more competitive fields. And if I mention these competitive fields, you'd be surprised. Yeah, psychiatry, ophthalmology, dermatology. Yeah, because they are very flexible in terms of hours. They're 8 to 5, hardly any emergencies. And then they have lots of patient volume, lots of opportunities for academic publishing, so career advancement. So they tend to become very competitive. Outside those fields, though, neurosurgery is one of the other more competitive fields. And I think one of the major reasons is that neurosurgery is unique. It's very unique in terms of the demands and the tools that we use. So the cognitive demands of it are quite high, but the tools also we use are at the cutting edge in every way. Almost all hospitals you go to, the most cutting edge sort of technical is from microscope to things we call neuronavigation machines, or what we discussed the other time, neuroendovascular methods of treatment, catheter-based treatments. Neurosurgery always seems to be either using the latest tool, inventing the latest tool, and so on. And I think that's quite stimulating for human beings. It's an interesting opportunity. Then also the patients are very complex, they're very difficult, so therefore when you do manage and you treat them and they do well, it's extremely rewarding psychologically, physically, and it pays well. as well. So what's not to like?
He comes from a family of high achievers, and it is no wonder that he spent many years to specialize in a unique surgical field.
I grew up in a family where we had everything. I have an older brother who's a urological surgeon, quite famous. I have another older brother who's a really well-accomplished engineer. We lost one of my brothers who is a fantastic lawyer, Harvard trained and everything. And then I have another brother who's very good into finances and all and on and on. So I really had a lot of different career aspirations. But when I finished my high school, I was very much influenced by a lot of the mentors I was around, and all two of them in my high school were very heavily leaned towards the medical field. And also my late father was very clear in his mind that he thought that that would be my natural inclination as a surgeon, and that's how I ended up there. So I wish I could say yes, I always knew I was going to be a surgeon, but no, I think life happens and you respond, and it has a way of selecting you, and you have a way of making choices, and eventually you most likely end up where you should have been anyway. For me, it was really just a question of meeting the right people. That's important. I have had the biggest advantage I've had in this life is mentors. I have had an uncanny ability to find powerful, engaging, really good mentors at all stages of my life. Primary school, high school, a little bit in my basic training, and then after that, everywhere. As a general surgeon, the people who selected me, trained me, inspired me, actually found the scholarship for me to go train as a neurosurgeon. And when I went trained as a neurosurgeon, I found even more powerful mentors who took me to the field, including the people who trained me. So that is the one thing I would say that has guided me. It's mentors at all stages. Yeah. So from there, it's practicalities. What are you interested in? What's available? And then, are you willing to put in? Do you have it in you? Because like you say, just when you say 15 years of training, it's not just 15 years of training. There's a lot that goes into that physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, and it's a long journey. So the practicality of what I'm willing to put myself through to achieve a goal, what's available, and then you end up with a result.
He draws his biggest inspiration from his late father.
The biggest mentor I had was my father. Definitely the biggest role model. And as he shaped my thoughts in all the ways, every way. He was. I used to say that my dad was a simple, hardworking man, but as I get older, I realize he was a very complex man. Actually, he was not that simple. But he grew up he had a very difficult childhood, which he was often very early with a big sibling, and he took up the role of as a caregiver extremely early. He wasn't the oldest, he was the second oldest, but the oldest and him kind of made a pact with my uncle, and essentially he decided he was not going to be able to do the big role of taking care of the whole family, but my dad was the best prospect. So my uncle actually more or less sacrificed his life so that my dad could go to school. And then my dad ended up now carrying really two of them, but my dad ended up carrying the burden of taking care of the rest of their siblings. And from then the only thing I can tell you is that he had an oak strength. Nothing fazed him, Whatever storms, he would calm you down, and he would discipline you when you needed it, and he would carry you when you needed it, and you understood the principles. He separated wants from needs, and he had a large circle. They always say some men build a circle around their families, some build a larger circle and put some of their brothers and sisters, but some men, the whole world is their circle. My father was one of those people. When he died at his funeral, it was interesting. We had a pay slip of his where school fees was being deducted for people. Some of them on the list we don't really recognize. We don't know who they are. But it was ridiculous. It was only like 256 shillings, and school fees going to my brothers and some of my cousins, and they were almost 17. And then a little bit of money was left. Not only that, they were all living in his house. Like his kids, they were sharing whatever. So that was my father, and he kind of just had a indefectible strength about him that knew that by hook and crook you were going to succeed. You're going to put in the effort, and the effort is going to reward you. But by God, you better know that there's going to be effort. Yeah, that would be the best summary of him.
Dr. Mogere looks back at his journey and draws valuable lessons from it.
The one thing it did set, and now I realize it as advantage when I look at my little guys, is that excellence as a habit becomes ingrained in you. So then it gives you a secondary psychological advantage, which I think a lot of people don't realize you may have, is that you expect to be successful. And you understand that the components to be successful include, I am going to put in an effort, and the opportunities are few, so that my effort has to be superlative. It cannot be average or normal. It has to be more than that. And if I do that, then I've put myself in the best position to benefit from these opportunities as and they occur. So excellence is a habit. So that's what I would say. So I don't know if you call really that pressure, but it is expected that you will make something of yourself. It's expected you understand the route to making something of yourself is to work hard. And I don't mean that in any generic sense. Is that, input, output. This is the input. If you put this input, you're going to get this output. So something like that. So that's what I would say.
He hopes to impart everything that he learned from his father to his children. But on what career path to follow, the jury is still out.
One is 5 going on 6, and one is about to turn 1 next month. So the 5-year-old is already playing doctor in many ways. His mother is also a doctor. So I'm not sure he has much of a chance to choose law, for example, or architecture. I don't know. But they are too young at the moment to really say. I think that... but I have a strong suspicion that just basically based on the lifestyle, who knows? I think they might end up there. At least him. I don't know about the other. The other one is the young one is a bit stubborn and even at 10 months, 11 months, he knows what he wants, and it doesn't seem like nobody will tell him what to do. So ask me in about 18 years, I'll tell you.
When not working as a neurosurgeon, Dr. Mogere involves himself in diverse activities and interests, from martial arts to technology.
I do a lot of road trips. I love driving. I've been to very many places, and I always take my boys there, and we go along with my whole family, my wife. So I do a lot of outdoor camping and stuff like that. I also like going to the coast a lot. I enjoy snorkeling, I do a bit of boating, a little bit of that, which is good because my son loves that as well. So I'm very keen on rugby. That's passion. The team I chose keeps losing now, so I'm a little bit depressed, but it occupies me as well. And then I enjoy fitness, and then reading a lot, lots of reading, interesting books. Actually, I'm not very loyal in terms of genre, but I'm a rabid consumer. I read everything from politics to history to autobiographies.
Dr. Mogere is of the opinion that it takes a certain kind of personality to be a surgeon, or a neurosurgeon at that. This, he says, is someone who is curious, but he doesn't take anything for granted.
Yeah, I feel very privileged and very lucky. And life, it takes more than hard work. It also takes the breaks. And the breaks is not luck really, it's just being prepared with hard work and knowledge, and then when the breaks happen, you're in a position to take full advantage of them. So yeah, I enjoy the field enormously. It's very rewarding. I also enjoy working for the university in particular. The thing that I do, I can only do maybe in 2 hospitals at the moment in the whole country. So this happens to be one of them, and I happen to be able to do it, so it works out quite well for me. So yeah, I don't imagine myself doing anything else.
Dr. Mercy Korir for KTN News Doctor's Diary.